6.
Did you already
I
write it?
did on the.
Slowly but surely.
It is just.
Alrighty, everybody, it is 1 o'clock and we are officially recording the meeting. I will call it to order. This is the Landmark Preservation Commission meeting at September 17, 2024, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, calling the meeting to order. The first thing we do at our commission meetings is introduce ourselves and the commission. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Julie Johnson. I'm the a Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. Graham, do you want to take it away?
Sure, I'm Graham Johnson, also a Preservation Project Manager by the Denver Planning Board.
I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
Hello, I'm George Dennis. I'm retired law enforcement nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
And my name is Chris McGinnis. I'm a forensic architect, and I was nominated by the mayor's office.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Great, thanks everybody. So our very first item of on the agenda is meeting records for approval. These meeting records are from August 2024. Commissioners, did you have any changes, any corrections that you wish to make from those?
No.
All right, do I hear a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair,
Nick,
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
thank you very much. Do I hear a second?
Yep,
Graham has seconded it. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, staff, thank you very much. The meeting records have been approved as presented. The next thing that we do, the next thing we do is we talk about audio tips for those of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. You can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu. You can add background noise suppression. Test your speaker and microphone, adjust their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options like you can select your speaker and microphone devices. You can test your microphone and speakers and adjust their maximum output volumes. And if you're still having audio challenges, you can always switch to the phone for audio. Alrighty, then the next thing that we do in our meetings is we reserve a little bit of time at the beginning of every meeting for the public to comment on historic preservation in general. Remember, the publics have up to 2 minutes each for comments about historic preservation in general. And this does not include comments associated with any of the specific projects under our review BLPC today. Is there anyone here? It doesn't look like anybody here wants to make a general public comment about historic preservation. No worries. If you are joining us, you can click the hand raise button on Zoom and or you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. If you are having trouble with that, you can always email us at landmark@denvergov.org. Do we have any? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, I don't have any emails. All right, then moving on to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. These are routine design review items recommended for the commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with the landmark preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for consent agenda items. The first will be I will announce the consent agenda by address. I will ask commissioners if they have any desire to remove an item from said consent agenda. Commission members will announce any ex parte or conflicts of interest on any of the items, and then the commission will make a motion and vote. And I would like to make just a real quick note on 2024-ZLAM-042 at 2948 California Street. We did receive public comment today, and as I understand it, the staff has responded because those were really questions that were not under Landmark Commission purview. Great, thanks, Crystal. All right, then I will go ahead and announce the consent agenda. 2024-CUA-434 at 3441 Alcott Street in Potter Highlands. 2024-ZLAM-042 at 2948 California Street in Curtis Park. 2024-COA-518 at 239 Acoma Street in the Baker neighborhood. And 2024-COA-623 at 401 East Colfax Avenue, Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception. All right, commissioners, do you have any desire to take anything off of here?
Do not.
No, any conflicts of interest, anything? Okay, awesome. All right, then do I hear a motion from the floor to accept?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Graham. Is there a second?
Second.
George has seconded it. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, the consent agenda has been approved as presented. Thank you, staff. All right, let's move on to our design review process. The chair will announce the design review items on the agenda by order of address. Commission members will announce any ex parte or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation. Commissioners can question the staff. The applicant presentation comes after that, and it will be limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners may question the applicant. After the applicant's presentation, there will be a public comment period of, and everyone from the public that wishes to comment on the project will be given 2 minutes per person. If you are joining us virtually and you would like to speak regarding a project and are not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling on your phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. And if you're having difficulty with either of those options, email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number. After public comments, staff will clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate, and then the commission will make a motion and vote. All right, the first item is 2024-COA-590 at 115 West Cedar Avenue in the Baker neighborhood. And our staff is Jesse. Take it away, Jesse.
All right. So this is houses at 115 Cedar Avenue. It did suffer fire damage recently, and as a result, the applicant began replacing the decorative shingle work in the gable ends of the building. The new material that they installed did not match the historic material and profile and appearance, and the building was cited for violation. So while inspecting the fire damage and shingle replacement, the landmark inspector also noted the addition of trapezoidal block walls at the front of the house and added the retaining walls to that violation list. Landmark staff is recommending approval with conditions, citing guidelines 2.12 and 5.8. And I'll spend the next few slides going over why we're recommending that. So the applicant is requesting to replace the inappropriate decorative shingles with Allura composite shingles. The applicant is specifying the straight edge shingle for the gable ends on the side of the house and half round shingles for the front gable. These match the historic profiles that were on the house. You can see that in the photos on the left-hand side of the screen for the side gable and on the left-hand photo for the front of the house at the bottom of the screen. And we feel that matching that the proposed material shown on the left and right match as closely as possible those historic profiles and feel that it meets guidelines 2.12. So the applicant is also requesting to replace a portion of the retaining wall at the sidewalk with a brick retaining wall, but is proposing to keep the curvilinear trapezoidal concrete block wall at the front of the house. The brick wall will use general shell modular red brick with a cap on it. And the brick wall will be 1 foot in height and will run the full width of the lot. Staff feel that the brick retaining wall meets guideline 5.18, or excuse me, 5.8 rather, but does not feel that the curvilinear trapezoidal concrete block wall meets guideline, the guideline, specifically sub-guideline 5.8.h, which recommends not using trapezoidal block with a curved base. So staff is recommending approval of this application with the condition that the curved base concrete trapezoidal block wall be replaced with a traditional material like the brick, or that it be removed altogether.
Jesse, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
No.
Oh, you don't, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Is our applicant here? Nope, okay. Is our applicant joining us virtually? Do we have a hand raised? Yay.
Hi, this is Dan Delaney.
Hi, yeah, we can hear, can you hear us?
We can.
Oh, okay, excellent. When you've got 10 minutes to tell us about your project, and when you begin that 10 minutes, please start with your name and your address for our records. And take it away.
Okay. Yeah, this is Dan Delaney with Delaney Architecture, Rio Delaney with Delaney Architecture, and Mark Haugen, the owner of the property.
Okay.
And we're all at the same computer. Mark.
Okay. Does the computer have an address?
The address is 115 West Cedar Avenue.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And so you've seen the narrative we sent. I don't know if you had everybody had a chance to read it, but we'll start with the siding on the gables that the owner Mark has installed. You know, it's what they call the fish scale, and it's true wood, which is an approved material, and he would like to keep that and feels that that's meets the intent of the historic guidelines, and would prefer to have it on all sides, all four gables if possible. At least that's the position we want to take on this. And I guess we'll move into the masonry next. Do you want me to do that in this time frame?
That'd be great.
Okay. On the masonry, we are replacing the front trapezoidal block with the brick that matches the house as best that we could find, and that would be 1 foot high, and that'll go up to the sidewalk but 6 inches back, which is what the right-of-way requested. So there will be a 6-inch gap between the sidewalk and the wall, and then it'll have a cap, and there's a wrought iron railing too that'll be on that beyond the wall a little bit. And it'll actually wrap on the west side. It'll wrap until it can not go any further to the back of the house, just because of the grade that's there between the two houses. The house on the west is a little lower, and that retains the dirt, and also the dirt that is at the trees that are there too, to help preserve those. The trapezoidal planters that are closer to the house, we would like to propose leaving those. We've seen lots of examples throughout the neighborhood over 20. There's all sorts of examples of it in the neighborhood, and we feel that being closer to the house, it's back far enough where it doesn't really distract from the overall appearance of the house. There are some trees in one of those, but that actually is on the tree you see in the front elevation is pretty close to that wall. And we are replacing that wall with the brick. That's the intent. That would be on the west property line. And then the other tree, which I believe that's apricot, right?
They're both apricot.
Both apricot trees. They've been there a while. They're older specimens. We'd like not to lose them, of course, but there's a little bit of work with the one on the west that where the roots are probably against that existing trapezoidal wall there that we're removing, but that would be a brick wall. This wall that's along the sidewalk would butt up against the existing brick wall that's on the east side of the east neighbor, and so it'll tie into that. The elevation of the grade is about the same for both of those houses. I think that's about all that I had. And you can see some examples that we've taken photos of around the neighborhood that are similar to this house. And, you know, some of them have the trapezoidal wall block that's up to the sidewalk. Of course, we're removing that on this with this property. And we'd like to try to have have the ones where the planters are back away from behind the metal fencing and brick wall closer to the house.
Also the curvilinear.
Also, we'd like to keep the curvilinear aspect of that wall, those planter walls in the back.
And the examples show numerous other locations that use a curvilinear at the entrance walkway.
Right, yeah, I did mention that. Yeah, so the examples are in that one attachment of what we saw around the neighborhood, and this isn't even half of them. But we thought these were the best examples that came close to this property.
Also, the wall has been in place for many years.
Yeah, how long?
I really don't know. I'm guessing 8 or so years.
Can you hear Mark?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. Okay, anything else, Mark?
Well, on the shingles, there are other houses that have the fish scale shingles in the neighborhood on the side gables. In fact, my neighbor has a combination of fish scale and rectilinear shingles on the same face. And
that's on the east.
It's
side.
on their
Or the
west side, which is my east side.
Yeah.
And then
West side of the house that's on the east.
I don't have any documentation, but prior to the fire, I was in the attic and there were pieces. It was clear to me that rectilinear shingles had been placed on top of the original curved shingles. My understanding is that originally the house did have curved shingles on the east and west side, but as dilapidation occurred decades later, somebody superimposed rectilinear shingles on top of them.
Mm.
In fact, the side gables had a real hodgepodge of different shingle types from different decades, and you know, I would like to see curved shingles on the east and west side that would match the south side, which is the front of the house, make everything congruent.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that
Um,
it, gentlemen? Oh,
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
excellent. Let's see if the commissioners have any questions for you. Commissioners, any questions?
I had a few.
Erica has one, or
So I just want to be clear, your application materials talk about replacing the east and west sides of the gables with straight edge shingles, but you're actually saying that you are proposing something else?
Well, if possible, I'd like to keep the existing east and west gables in the rectilinear fashion. I mean, the more I prefer that look. I also, the more, you know, it's already been torn off. It's an old house. The more you tear off stuff and replace, you're just damaging the underlying materials.
Okay, and then, but you are proposing to replace the shingles that are on the front gable now with ones that are round profile, is that correct? As your application materials say?
No, we would like to actually have the, what they call a fish scale pattern or profile. And I know that's not, you know, not as round as the neighbor, but that's what we would like, is to keep what it has been installed there on the south side.
Okay, so you are asking for something different than the application materials you submitted?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and then just a quick clarification. You know, the drawings make it seem as if the retaining wall along the sidewalk is very, you know, has a clear kind of stop and end point from the curvilinear walls that flow off of it at the stairs. But it looks like to me on the photos that they're really just integrated. It's just one wall. And so it's a little unclear to me where you're proposing the brick would end.
Mhm.
Especially since you're talking about a 1 foot height, which again seems lower than what you have with these concrete blocks existing. Is that correct?
Yeah, good question and observation. When the wall is put in, the brick wall, it'll be the CMU that you see that's higher than that, that'll be removed because it'll be high. It would look funny to have it higher, yeah. And then where it curves on the sides as you go up those steps, those will have to be straightened out. Or no, I'm sorry, they would stop at the step and then it would be lowered, you know, so it's not above the new brick wall, but it would curve into that brick wall on either side.
Well, also, there is a grade change as between the house and the public sidewalk. There's about a foot of elevation change. That's just a natural lay of the land.
Yeah, that's just going from the sidewalk to the house. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Right, but that's why we want that brick wall there, is to retain that dirt. But then that's basically the brick wall would stop at that lower step, and then the CMU would be dropped down to that elevation of 1 foot, and then it would curve as you see it there on the sides, at the steps as you go up.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for the applicant, commissioners? Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Do we have anybody, public comments? Okay, anybody joining us virtually that would like to make a comment? For public comments for design review projects? Anyone here in person can raise their hand and talk for 2 minutes about their comments. Anybody joining us virtually can click the hand raise button on Zoom. You can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if joining by phone. You can always email us at landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number, and you'll have 2 minutes. Do we have anybody? Doesn't look like it. Okay, alrighty, then, being that there's no public comment, Jesse, did you have any other comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Could you bring up the presentation again, Brittany?
sure. Oh, I said sure. Sure, Brittany can. Sure, Brittany will do it. Cause she's just so good, I know she can do it.
Which slide do you want?
Just the first one will be fine. I'll address these point by point, or item by item within this application. First and foremost, this is the application that is before the commission for review. It is to replace the non-compliant shingle with shingles that better match the historic shingles that were on the house. And the retaining wall at the front being brick, and request for retention of the curvilinear trapezoidal block wall. Starting with the shingles, they do not match the historic shingles in place. We've had this conversation with the property owner multiple times that we would be supportive of changing the profile of the shingle if we had photographic evidence to support that there was something else there other than what was previously in place. So the straight edge on the sides of the house and a round shingle on the front of the house. The profile that was put in without permits is a fish scale, which is a much more shallow curve to it, and it doesn't match that round shingle at all. And another point that I would make on these historic houses, it was not uncommon for them to use a more simple straight edge shingle on the side gables and reserve the front gable for more decorative round or fish scale, or sometimes diamond shaped shingles. So in this case, we have to go off the evidence that we have before us, and that was that there was a round edge or round profile shingle on the front gable and straight edge shingles on the side gables. So staff is recommending that they move forward with the proposal as is under guideline 2.12. Additionally, moving on to the retaining wall. These were not permitted ever. If you go back in Google Street View, sometime between 2014 and 2019, that wall didn't exist. The grade was flat and matched the grade of the surrounding structures. In 2019, you can see that portions of this retaining wall were constructed, specifically the retaining wall on the right-hand side and the retaining wall closest to the house. And there was not a grade change at that time. Then fast forward sometime between 2019 and today, the rest of the retaining wall was added in and the grade was changed. So this wasn't permitted. It is a zoning violation because of the height and setback, and because of the change in grade. And it is a landmark violation because it was never reviewed by our team. It uses materials that are non-compliant with our guidelines. So moving forward, our recommendation would stay that the retaining wall closest to the house be changed to either a traditional material like brick that would fit our guidelines, or that it be removed altogether. Additionally, what I would say about that is the concern over the trees. Change in material or removal of that wall should not impact the trees. And I would also remind the commission that landscaping trees are not within our purview for review.
So thanks, Jesse. So to be clear, they want type of shingles they were talking about, they would have to come back with a different application.
Exactly,
Okay,
correct.
And just for clarity, that the commission may want to discuss this, they installed true wood. We do not
Yeah.
allow true wood on historic structures.
I was gonna,
We have approved that material for new infill construction and new additions to historic structures. And previously, the staff administratively approved true wood to replace historic shingles in a historic house. However, we found that it does not match the profile accurately and is therefore not in compliance with our guidelines. And the commission has reviewed this request specifically recently and denied the request for the true wood shingle material on historic structures.
One more follow-up thing, I had my notes here. The commission did review a similar type of request a couple of months ago at 227 West Fifth Avenue, where they had replaced the shingles on the house, not to match the historic shingles and without permits. They were requesting to keep the change in material, and the commission denied that. They since submitted an application with materials that better match the historic shingle profile, and we were able to approve that administratively.
okay,
So I'd recommend that commission give guidance to the applicants on the true wood on whether that's something we'd even consider as an application. As that they're requesting to keep what is installed.
all right. Commissioners, any other questions for staff before we go forward? All right, Jesse, Brittany, thank you. Let's, commissioners, then let us go into deliberation. So a little wonky that they were requesting things that aren't in their application. We are discussing the application, not their request. Any comments?
Yeah,
Chris?
I have a little bit of a hard time envisioning this, the brick knee wall at the front in combination with the trapezoidal block and how that'll kind of look overall. I think it's gonna look a little funky. And I think that it'll draw more attention to the differences between the two than it will kind of masking the two, in my opinion.
Okay. Grab?
I'm curious how Flat Lot ended up with retaining walls,
I
but that's
know.
beside the point. I think, the trapezoidal blocks are not something that we've approved in the past. And
Correct.
it sounds like the applicant has a plan to, the fence was mentioned, it's called out on the drawings. Looks like it's 4 feet. I don't know if that's something, is a question for staff. We don't know what that fence is gonna look like. It's noted on just the site plan. But that caught my attention, in conversation. It's not there now. It's shown and discussed for installation. But I would agree that if there is gonna be a retaining wall, it needs to match the guidelines. And I don't know, Jesse, if there was conversation about the fence at all, or if that was something that is
That
on-
was, yeah, I missed it on the site plan. Unfortunately, I was also working on a window replacement project for this same property, so. And I took them over from Bridget, so it was a lot of moving parts.
Right, it is on the site plan, we just don't have an elevation or detail on those
Yep.
materials.
Certainly, and you can request that that be added into the application. And if you're comfortable with staff reviewing it, that's fine.
So, that's my thought on the retaining wall.
Okay. Or Erica?
Yeah, I guess, moving on from the retaining wall, which I've agreed
Yeah.
with my fellow commissioners about, onto the siding, again, just kind of reiterating what staff has said about evidence of, what had existed previously that were clearly historic, or at least in keeping with, what would have been expected historically, that, the siding should match those profiles, but also that with the true wood material, that if it's, if we found it to not have a good, I'm assuming it's like the depth or of the profile that is not in keeping with the historic shingles, that I would, again, I would not want to approve that material remaining, both for that product, but also the shape of the shingles. So I would support what staff is recommending.
Thanks. I have a question about the true wood. Would this be the first time we would have approved it on a historic house? I know we've done it on infill.
Staff administratively approved that product several years ago. However, precedent is never created by prior decisions, and upon further evaluation of that product and matching the profile, again, we found it not to be in compliance with our guidelines that suggest matching the profile, dimensions, shadow lines. It's also a panelized product, and it has seams through the middle of the shingle, which we have found problematic. And even when we approve it for infill construction and new additions, we require them to spec very specifically that they will cut it at the end of the natural edge of the shingle.
Okay, all right. Other commissioners, comments? George or Nick, anything additional?
I would just echo with what the other, or echo what the other commissioners have said. I think staff, their judgment is correct. I mean, it was a fair compromise in what they proposed, but there are these details within this application that don't match with either what was said or what their intent is, which gives me cause for concern.
Yeah, to get what they were talking about, they would have to have a new application, which they can do. All right, then commissioners, do I hear a motion from?
Madam
Graham?
Chair, I'll make a motion that I move to approve with conditions, application 2024-COA-590 for siding replacement and retaining walls at 115 West Cedar per design guidelines 2.12, 2.5, 5.8, character defining features for the Baker Neighborhood Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with two conditions. First, that the curved face concrete trapezoidal block wall be replaced with traditional material outlined by guideline 5.8 or be removed. Second condition, that details of the new site fence be provided for staff for approval prior to installation.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Erica has seconded it. Graham made the motion. All in favor, commissioners? Aye.
I
Any opposed, nay? All right. Then-
You oppose?
Sorry, I said aye.
Aye.
I apologize. I was a little late to the.
That's all right. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. We have approved that with conditions, and they will be working with Jesse going forward. All right, our next design review, the second one today is 2024-COA-510 at 527 Gilpin Street in the Driving Park neighborhood. And that is Amy Amadon's project. Hi, Amy.
The computer has locked. If I need to turn the camera on here. Sorry.
To the rescue.
Amy Amadon, representing the Landmark team for review of 527 North Gilpin Street. So this particular project, we're talking about the north half of this duplex on the right-hand side of your screen. In 2022, staff was approached to, review a remodel of the basement. And the only scope that we were required to comment on was the proposed replacement of the glass only in a basement level window. It needed to be tempered because the remodel involved creating a new shower bathroom area. That was issued and the project went into construction. When inspection occurred in September 2023, we found that the scope had been exceeded, that all of the basement level windows, one upper level window on the historic resource, some windows in a non-historic addition had all been replaced with vinyl units, and some siding had been replaced on the non-historic addition. So enforcement began to correct that situation. The property owner, Tom Sisk, who I think is here with us today, came back to staff and received approval for remediation of those conditions, including putting the proper kind of siding on and installing wood windows in all locations. That was the applicant's proposal. Staff did not require wood. That work has not been begun yet because since then the property owner has some concerns about the idea of installing wood at the basement level. Again, that wasn't something staff had required. Brittany, could you advance the slide? Sorry, thank you. The slide here is the basement level window, which we originally thought was just going to be switched to tempered glass. And you can see a vinyl unit there. Can you advance again? Sorry, I jumped topics there, but the applicant has been concerned about their approval they have to put wood windows back at the basement level, and also objects to replacing the vinyl windows at this floor level because they feel they have such limited visibility and that it's an unnecessary cost. So after several discussions with staff where we've indicated we do not have the authority to grant an approval for vinyl windows in a historic resource, the determination was made that the applicant could approach you, and that's why we're here today. The staff recommendation on this project is to continue to deny vinyl windows as they're not included in the design guidelines as an allowable material on a historic resource. Even the guidelines for basement level egress window, which have a slightly longer list of allowable materials, including composite and Fibrex, do not include vinyl in the list. It's my understanding that the commission has always felt that a vinyl material has visual differences. It's does not look as much as a high quality material as other options for window replacement units, and they are more subject to deterioration and they have not been allowed. So therefore staff's recommendation is denial. The other concern staff has with retaining the existing installed windows is their inset in the wall plane. So you see in this slide, the remediation approval, which still stands, which staff granted in December of last year, required the units to be installed roughly 2 inches back from the face of the masonry wall, which is a standard condition. In this case, the windows are deeply recessed. I assume they are awning windows and that they would swing out towards that grate, and so clearance is needed. But that is an uncharacteristic installation location. So for those two reasons, again, the vinyl material and the inset of the window, the staff recommendation on the application is denial.
Amy, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Amy?
Amy, do you have any documentation of what the windows were before? Do we know?
No, we don't.
Anything else? Okay, Amy, thank you very much. Our applicant is here.
Yes.
Yeah. Come on up and have a seat, please.
You have a picture?
Oh,
You have
yes,
a couple of pictures of the street view that I sent you.
Brittany can help go back through the slides I just showed,
Okay.
which included a street view of the house. If you'd like to, go ahead and take a seat.
Okay,
Yeah.
so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Please have a seat. You'll have 10 minutes to tell us about this. And at the beginning of that, please give your name and address for our records.
Tom Sisk, with regard to 527 North Gilpin.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to apologize probably to the commission here. We've lived in the neighborhood in a different house for a zillion years, and we certainly believe in historic preservation more than anyone. And long story short, we hired a contractor that I relied on to do things properly. A licensed contractor in the city and county of Denver, Town and Country Custom Homes. And we had an architect initially involved that did spec out our remodel, which was mostly an interior remodel. And we didn't really intend to replace any windows until the contractor wrote some of the upper windows. And then our architect was not involved at that time. He ordered replacement windows. If you had a picture of the back of it, I think, of the back of it.
Brittany, could you go back through there? I think, there we go. There's the back of the house.
Okay, in the
Thank
back
you.
of the house. These windows up here were busted, so he ordered new vinyl windows. What do I know about vinyl or anything else? And figured that was what was in there, and he never checked with Landmark. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. I relied on him. And, so we've agreed to replace these windows up here that you can see. And to do that, it's gonna run me like $18,000. We've got to replace that one up there as well. There's windows along the side there too that we're replacing. And, so I'm paying an additional $18,000 for his mistake because he didn't check with you folks. And I'm just asking for mercy here. We then, at the same time these were ordered, and we haven't ordered these yet, but we decided he put in these vinyl windows in the basement, the little hopper windows that you open up. Actually, they look more historic when you look at them from the inside. And, we're obligated to replace those as well. That's gonna run me another $5,000 or $7,000 that I simply don't wanna do. So the mission today, I understand the law, you don't like vinyl windows, but it seems to me that if the issue of common sense has anything to do with anything, you can't see these windows. This one here is behind an air conditioning unit. The two other windows are down the side of the house. If you could show the front of the house again. They're down on this side. There's a retaining wall that goes down there, and you simply can't see them. And, I just don't like the theory of having to spend $7,000 or more to fix something that you can't see. So my question is, can you grant an exception on this or not? I have a few other questions, but I open it up with that request. Madam Chairman, what do you think?
Well, let's ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you first.
Okay, sure.
Commissioners, any questions for
I
us?
might add one thing.
Sure, certainly.
The thing that bothers me is I'm here. I don't know anything about construction. I barely, can start my car. And, we relied on this contractor who's actually built things in historic areas. He's doing one now on across from the country club area in Gilpin. And he did a major one on 7th Avenue, and he cut corners. We broke those windows, did everything else. He never checked with you guys. And he shouldn't have done that. For that, I apologize. And I've agreed at least to replace the windows you can see, which is an expense I'm incurring that I didn't think I'd have to spend. And it just, it's irritating to think I need to spend extra money to fix windows you simply can't see.
All right, commissioners, questions for our applicant?
Yeah, I have
Yes,
one.
sure.
Have you asked the contractor to reimburse you for replacing his windows? Have you had that
But I
conversation?
sure have.
And it hasn't gone anywhere?
No. Yeah, certainly I can hire an attorney and go after them for that amount of money, unless I'm awarded attorney's fees. That seems like a lost cause. If I were gonna do that, I'd go after them for the whole thing, windows above and the replacement for the basement windows. And I suppose I can still do that. He's in business, but I don't have any interest in hiring an attorney and going to court. And it's break-even proposition.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, all right. All right, you can have a seat if you like, and then, we'll, no doubt we'll discuss your question when we go into deliberation.
I do have one kind of funny question. I understand you make an exception for Fibrix, which is an Anderson window product. Is that correct or not correct?
Correct. For egress only.
In the basement, it can be any basement window. It doesn't have to be egress.
It can be any basement window? So here's my question, and again, I'm not a construction person, but you know, I go on the website here and I look up a Fibrix window. And it's actually a material that's made of polyethyl vinyl or whatever it is, and wood. And it's 60% vinyl, 40% wood, and I guess they take the wood and wrap it with plastic somehow, and then they mesh it all together, and that becomes their product. You actually can construe, since it's 60-40, that it's a vinyl window. But take that for what it's worth. I can read that to you here if you have any interest, but for the sake of time, I'll be quiet.
Okay,
So once the commission enters deliberation, it will be amongst the commission. You have 4 minutes left, so if you have anything further you'd like to share with the commission, now would be the time.
So I have 4 minutes
You have 4
after you
minutes.
deliberate or now?
Now,
now,
It's more than irritating that I'm here instead of the contractor. You think that since he's a licensed contractor in the city and county of Denver, you might want to talk to him about violating your procedures and your guidelines. I can throw that in. It's a conclusion. Hope that common sense prevails here. You can't see him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate anything you can do for me.
thank you. All right, we will go to the public comment portion. There's nobody here, so is there anyone joining us virtually that would like to make a comment? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, great. All right, Amy, did you have any other comments before we go into deliberation? All right, commissioners, we are in deliberation then. What are your thoughts here? Sure.
I feel for the applicant here. I sympathize, and as it relates to the basement windows, I would afford an exception here. Just given what the applicant said about the exposure. And I know it's not within the application and we shouldn't discuss it, but I would argue that the windows above the rear entry, the stair that splits to the basement and the main level of the house, those look nicer than the neighbor's windows. And so I'm a little surprised that you didn't ask to keep those as well. But those are my thoughts.
You take any issue with the kind of this is a duplex, right? If I'm not mistaken. So you have kind of they're supposed to kind of mirror each other and match historically. Do you have any, do you take?
It's difficult to enforce things that way. We looked at maybe a month or two ago, 6 units in a row that were all to be identical. I mean, you might have been in that review, but the variety between the doors and all the windows is, yeah, and it's all, a lot of it's done without review. And, you know, how do you go in and enforce that retroactively? And you know, you can't, in this instance, ask them to marry because what's on the neighboring property might be incorrect as well.
Yeah, it's a problem because they're generally privately owned, separately owned, and yeah. All right, other comments?
And I would just in answer to your, final question about the chemical components of the window. You're absolutely correct. The difference is that the vinyl window is a shiny, smooth finish, and the Fibrex looks more like wood, just given the embossed texture in it. And that's why I guess it's less or more palatable. But in this instance, like I say, I support the bond.
All right.
I mean,
Okay. Graham, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't have a specific comment, following Nick, but the one thing I guess I'll mention, given the comments about the contractor or liability of the contractor as a contractor.
Excuse me, can you speak up just a little?
I can, certainly, sorry, I was just saying,
Old,
I'm notoriously soft-spoken too, everybody in the room will attest to that. I just wanted to clarify that as a contractor and permitting through the city and county of Denver, the permit guidelines for residential projects specifically do note what does and does not require a permit. And windows are one of the only exceptions on the list, which typically don't unless the property's in a historic district, which is pretty clearly noted there. So again, just to give a little context, for the conversation or to warn neighbors in the future and that kind of thing, that is a place where it's buried in the permitting guide, but windows for historic buildings are there's truly just a little asterisk right next to them. So, I think to that end, it's ultimately the responsibility of the property owner, the title. It's something we've talked about, outreach to folks who buy properties in historic districts, things like that. I don't know. We've had a couple of these vinyl windows. We had one that was continued. We're waiting to come back on that was really visible that we didn't feel like we could justify. I think Nick's point to the less visible is well taken. We've recently approved windows that weren't approved for replacement, but were a quality wood clad aluminum window on a secondary elevation. I don't know if we have an example of approving vinyl windows on a secondary elevation. I know we've done that when the windows were inadvertently replaced, but with a product that met the guidelines. The Fibrex is always gray area, but the clarification Nick answered is, I think, accurate as well. This is a hard one where what's pretty clear both by the city's permitting requirements and our guidelines is that the windows unfortunately don't match. And I don't like that, but that's what's written.
Erica, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I feel for the applicant. But at the same time, I would hate to approve vinyl windows. So I'm a little bit stuck, I guess, but I think in the end, I think I have to go with what the staff is recommending because it's based on our guidelines. And while there might be common sense along that seems to be in opposition to that, I also think it's common sense to rely on the guidelines as what have been written to guide us in these sorts of decisions. So.
Okay, thank you. George, what are you thinking?
Well, the applicant can delegate as much as he likes to a contractor. The contractor could have solved this with a phone call ahead of time. I still think that the applicant is in the long run responsible for this case if his contractor was unaware of or didn't care about or thought he could get away with something that isn't in the guidelines. That's his problem with the contractor. I'll support staff on this one.
Thank you, George. Yes.
I really don't have any comments. I think everybody made good points and I'm having a struggle with it because there is this common sense.
It is a
part of it.
struggle. Yeah,
For sure.
it is.
But, I hate to do things that are.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna rely on the guidelines to tell us what to do here. All right, commissioners, do I hear a motion from the floor?
I can make a motion.
Thanks, Erica.
I move to deny application number 2024-COA-510 to allow vinyl windows to remain in the 4 locations that they have been installed and in the manner which they have been installed to serve the basement at 527 North Gilpin Street, as per design guidelines 2.16, 2.18, and 2.19. Character defining features for the Driving Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Very good, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George has seconded. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
So that was Nick. 1 nay. All right, the motion has been denied, or I'm sorry, the motion has passed, the application has been denied. All right, we are now on to our last design review project, and that's 2024-TAXC-009 at 2535 Champa Street in Curtis Park. And our staff person is Becca. Oh, there she is.
It's unusual to see me.
I know, wait, is this on, it's on the National Register?
Good afternoon, commissioners. Our next project is at 2535 Champa Street. This is a proposed tax credit project for interior wood floor rehabilitation and exterior masonry rehabilitation. Normally, you see tax credits on the consent agenda, and we don't go through the design review process. However, this project has some unique considerations that staff felt may require commission discussion. So as a reminder, for historic rehabilitation tax credit projects, we use the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation as our metric for review, rather than the Denver design standards guidelines. So the interior hardwood floor rehab, oh, Brittany, are you in charge of the slides? Now that, sorry, you can go back one. The interior hardwood floor rehab has already been completed. And although the work has been completed, the tax credit program does allow owners to claim qualified rehabilitation work up to 24 months after it began. So we're not concerned with that. Just want to give you an overview of the whole project. So on the first floor level, the wood floor was deteriorated past the point of repair. Therefore, a new wood floor was placed on top of the existing floor. Thus, should future methods of rehabilitation advance to allow rehabilitation, the original material is still present. On the second level, the floor was able to be rehabilitated, selective replacement of boards with those from secondary spaces such as closets allowed for an exact match of the existing boards. So all that work has already been completed. Now you can switch the slide, Brittany. The exterior masonry work has yet to be completed. The exterior brick was previously painted with a lead-based paint and possibly lime washed. On August 1st, 2024, Landmark staff member Jen Capetto visited the site to examine the masonry. She confirmed that the paint is heavily flaking from the masonry, and the underlying brick appears to have been mechanically cleaned a few decades prior to its painting. Where the brick is visible, most of the fire skin appears to be missing, likely due to this aggressive cleaning method decades prior. The applicants have worked with Landmark staff and masons to test different methods to remove the paint. So if we go to the next slide, Brittany, you can see some of the current examples. So the first slide was the original test patch with nothing removed. And here on the upper section, the brick has been removed, or the paint has been removed from the brick with the chemical removal. And to the lower section, use both a chemical and mechanical paint remover. Tests of chemical methods to encapsulate the paint had minimal success. Instead, the property owner proposes to remove the paint through combined chemical and mechanical means. They will first remove what paint they can using Dumont's Smart Strip paint remover, and then we'll remove any remaining paint by hand using a fine grit abrasive and a
PA filter vacuum. As the fire skin has already been removed, the applicants are proposing to apply a sealant to the brick to mimic the non-existent fire skin. This sealant, which is the Silox Treat 89W, is by Edison Coatings, and it should allow the brick to breathe while providing some level of protection against the elements. So these rehabilitation projects follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, which emphasize maintaining and repairing historic material where possible and replacing in kind where necessary. So for the brick rehabilitation, we're looking particularly at standard 6, which states chemical or physical treatments such as sandblasting that cause damage to historic materials should not be used. The surface cleaning of structures, if appropriate, shall be undertaken using the gentlest means possible. So these recommendations support the gentle cleaning of masonry as necessary to prevent deterioration. And as the existing paint is cracked, bubbling, and flaking, removing the paint is necessary to prevent water infiltration into the brick. As noted, there does not appear to be a fire skin on the brick, which is usually our primary concern when we're discussing a sort of abrasive approach to cleaning. So as a result, water can easily penetrate and then can penetrate the brick and then get trapped behind those layers of paint that are still there. So as a result, the brick has begun to spall in areas where this has happened and there is more damage imminent. Landmark staff does not generally recommend mechanical methods of paint removal, but we believe this two-pronged approach of chemical and light mechanical removal, followed by sealing the brick with a breathable sealant, and then repointing the structure, will allow the wall system to breathe as necessary and prevent future damage. So as these meet the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, staff is recommending approval of the project.
Great, Becca, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for Becca?
Is this a mass masonry wall?
Sorry,
Is it a mass masonry or is it multi-wide?
multi-wife, I believe.
I'm not
Yes.
understanding the question.
Is
again.
there-
Yes,
Sure.
it'll be multiple.
Jen is
Yes.
saying yes.
I wasn't sure what.
2 layers of brick.
Oh, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's a good question for Champa Street. But it is okay, good. Anybody else, commissioners? Questions for Becca? Okay, great. Well, I know that our applicant is here. Thank you for your patience. And so by now you probably know the routine. You'll have 10 minutes to tell us about this, and please start with your name and your request.
Thank you, Becca, and thank you, Commission, for considering our project today. My name is Monica Schaefer. I'm the owner of 2535 Champa Street. I do have some slides that I presented. If you can bring those up. So just a little bit of background about the house. It was built by Samuel Rose circa 1880. And as is the case with many Curtis Park Historic District houses, in the century and a half, it was sectioned off and rented out as many rooms. So for decades, it was just rotating door of renters. When we bought it in 2022, there were 8 people living there and it was fairly neglected. So our dream is to return it to a single family home and rehabilitate it to its former glory. This tax credit is just a fraction of our lifelong projects. But so these are just a few of the projects. I'll move through the other things quickly so we can talk about the paint removal, which is our biggest concern here. The tax credit scope is the wood floors, repairing the soffits, chimneys, and then the exterior brick. You can move forward. If you're wondering, this is the previous condition of the wood floors. So as she addressed, we wanted to rehabilitate the upstairs and then put an overlaying level on the downstairs. And the cost for that project, both upstairs and downstairs, is in the lower corner there. You can advance. The soffits have a lot of wood chipping to them. You can see there's holes with critters living inside of them. So for the, integrity of the house, those need to be addressed. Our constructor is going to be doing the soffits, chimneys, and brickwork. So it's one individual who's able to do all of this work for us. That's why you see combined costs in the corner for the tax credit purposes. You can advance. Chimneys need brick repair, paint removal, and some of them need crickets placed, as they do not have the support, so we'll be putting in that as well. Advanced, now we'll talk about the paint. So terrible condition, peeling, ugly, hideous color. I want to iterate an urgency to this project because we have 2 young children at home and that paint is easily picked up. So we really want to move forward with this project as quickly as we can. You can advance forward. We've talked to over 5 masons. Some of them, you know, right when they walk up, they don't know what they're doing because they're talking about sandblasters and we just say, no, thank you, walk and have them leave. So we've talked to a lot of people and have done some testing spots. The picture on this slide is an example of only using Smart Strip. And you can see that it does not remove the paint in totality. So there would still be an aesthetic look that does not look to what we want it to be and a safety hazard in my opinion with 2 young children. You can advance. So we did a test strip of first doing the Smart Strip and then doing some mechanical removal to see if we could get it all out, and that is the outcome there. And we much prefer that. And as Becca discussed earlier, in the process of doing these test strips, it was determined that the fire skin had already been removed at some point. So we feel that in order to restore aesthetics to the neighborhood and overall safety of the condition, removing it in totality with using both of these procedures together is our best option. You can advance forward again. And that's just so you can see those right next to each other, the top being the stripper only and then the bottom being the stripper with the mechanical removement. And then we proposed to use the Silox Street 89W. That was recommended to us by staff for the sealant. Can advance one more time. This is just an example of some of the brickwork that needs to be addressed. You can see there's chunks taken out, large spaces where there are mortar missing. And anytime there's a bad hail or rainstorm, there's chunks of brick in my yard. So it needs to be addressed. Can I answer any questions?
Oh, thank you. Okay, commissioners, questions?
Do you have a repointing, like you're gonna do some mortar work as well?
There does appear to need some mortar work, my naive eyes. The individual we are using, his name is Ruben Rivera. He's done most of the historic homes in the Curtis Park District. He's also lead paint certified, so he is very experienced.
Anybody else? Okay, okay, great, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so there's nobody here for public comment, so is anybody joining us virtually, Eric? If you are joining us virtually and you would like to speak, then please click the hand raise button in Zoom or dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand. Or you can email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number. Do we have any hands raised? Oh, we do have somebody, okay.
Let's see. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you really well. Can you hear us?
Yep. Oh, I
Okay,
just wanted to say, this
Oh,
isn't about
please.
this
Yeah.
project.
Oh, it isn't?
It was just that it sounded like this is the last project you're talking about.
It is.
Oh, I just thought I was on the agenda for window replacement at 3441 Alcott. I'm happy to talk to you at the end. I
That
just didn't want to.
application has been approved, Scott. If you want to
Oh.
reach out to Jesse
Okay,
following the meeting.
It was on
okay,
the,
that's great. I
Yeah,
didn't
no,
know.
that's great. That was on the consent agenda, so you're all set.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate
Okay, is there anybody who would like to make a public comment on this particular project? Okay, it doesn't look like it. All right. Okay, did you have any other comments, Becca?
Just that they're in the application, they did include, there's a line item for.
There is, okay, yeah.
Okay, great. Then commissioners, let us go into deliberation.
I'm gonna queue up Chris for this.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I have personally and professionally, I do have a little issue with the silane, the coating, the breathable, permeable coating. In my professional experience, those are become maintenance issues, and especially with brick that's deteriorated over this many years. It's a very, the mill thickness is really, really small. It's probably 20 mils thick. And so it doesn't really bridge cracks or little pinholes and all those little imperfections you have in your brick. In my opinion, is more of a maintenance issue than it is to kind of help with weather barrier type applications. That's just my 2 cents on that. I would traditionally not put a coating or any kind of sealant on it at all and just keep it as is, especially because it's a multi-ply construction. So that wall tends to breathe on its own. That's kind of built that way. And so that would be my only concern with the application.
Okay.
My question was kind of similar that, and Jen, curious to hear your thoughts too, if you're allowed to comment as staff and answer questions since you looked at it, but.
Well, she's the expert, so.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
we
she's
have a few
masonry
masonry
expert.
experts in the room, which is
Yeah.
good. I'm not among them, but when we've done this type of work on previous projects too, the use of a siloxane or a sealer has typically been like on a top of porous stone where the sides are still breathable. I
Right.
think the concern would be, and whether you used it before, Jen, in that capacity, that you're not trapping the water in the old soft mud brick. But it sounds like it has been already scaled or something like that, right? Where you don't even have the light skin from firing that these older bricks might have. So you're the only one in the room besides the applicant who's seen it in person.
Yeah, so I'm Jen Capetto, Landmark staff. Becca was out at a conference, and so I went met your husband, and we talked at length about the condition of the brick. Their contractor was recommending a concrete sealant as the sealer, and that's where I was like, no, that is a bad idea. So I know Edison Coatings makes really good products for restoration work. So does Prosoco. Prosoko, I can't remember how to pronounce it. And so I offered them some suggestions, and that this was the product that they decided to go with. But the reason that I was trying to get them away from using something that was way too strong. But I personally don't have experience with coatings because with siloxanes or other types of coatings because usually it hasn't been required when I have been involved with the project. It's not. When I was doing hands-on preservation work, the masonry was not in the condition that the condition of their masonry is in. It's usually in much better condition without having any issues with the fire skin and stuff like this. This one, clearly the fire skin is largely missing. So,
Gotcha.
does that help?
I think the selective application, like at the top of a row lock parapet or a windowsill, it may darken the masonry too. I don't know if you've done a test of the sealer, but
And sometimes if you don't clean the cleaning chemicals off well enough, that you can actually trap some of that stuff and create more damage over time. And create discolorations and things like that. So that's why if you're going to do it, if you really would like to do it, if commissioners approve that part of it, then I would also advise maybe to wait some time before you do it. So, and to kind of live with what you have to start with. You might like it, and might not want that because it'll give it a little bit more gloss too. Just my 2 cents.
Oh, those are good points. Yeah. George, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Been there, done that. Feel all your pains. I think there's a special place in hell for anyone who power washes
It's
or
a
paints
great
brick.
building.
I see from the application, intensive research. I also see intent to comply with historic standards and just wish me every bit of luck. I can support this one.
Okay. All right. George, anybody else? Did you have any thoughts?
I guess I will just say that on hearing about the sealant, when first reading it, I was like, oh, should they do that? Because there is kind of always this immediate, with the best of intentions, adding things tends to actually become a problem down the line. And so I think it's really great to hear your experience with it, Chris. And so I guess I just hesitate understanding, again, the best of intentions, but I just worry about maybe approving that sealant. I do also want to add, though, I appreciate all the planning, that how important it is to plan things out and really understand what are you undertaking and how best to go about what you want to accomplish. And clearly that was all done. So kudos to you for doing that. So yeah, I think I'm hesitant about the sealant as well.
Okay,
I think some simple things, if you don't do the sealant, also like Chris mentioned, to see is if you've got gutters and downspouts that aren't, with that soft brick, even like tree branches against the building and the wind can erode it, right? So just truly protecting the brick without actually coating it, right? You can create space, you can make sure it's not getting direct water that will be washing it, things like that. So if you do all this maintenance and you strip the paint, you've created something that breathes a lot better, which will be healthier for the masonry wall. But you just want to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't look like you're seeing water staining or things like that, for sure. So.
Yeah, and repointing will really help the kind of weatherproofing of your brick too. That's really important part of it.
My house is also old, soft brick, so
Yeah.
sensitive to the same things. Unfortunately, it's painted and it was painted when we got it and
Yeah.
it's still painted. And
Yeah, and I
haven't been
second
able to do anything
what
about it.
Eric was saying, kudos for you really did kind of, it's nice to see people actually think about what they're doing.
brilliant, yeah, it's a brilliant plan. So what do you recommend? Becca, what do you think? Should they come back to us with an application without the sealant? Or should we approve this with the friendly comments regarding the sealant? What are your
I
thoughts?
think we could do a friendly comment about the sealant of saying, we can test it or we can do the paint removal and then come back in 6 months or, not in January, but come back and see what it's like and see how the testing is weathered. I think that should be okay for the.
It's been painted for a long time. It's had something on it.
Yeah.
At this point, you'll be opening it up most likely.
I know, I can only imagine that house breathing for a sigh of relief. Brick is an amazing substance. It's alive in its very own way. All right, so the comments regarding the sealant, friendly comments, obviously, we could save you some money. Go figure. That hardly ever happens. Okay, so do I hear a motion from the floor?
I'll make the motion.
Erica, thank you.
I move to approve application number 2024-TAXC-009 for the rehabilitation of woodwork and masonry at 2535 Champa Street as per Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation 1, 2, and 4 through 6. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the friendly comments as noted.
Erica, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, second that.
Chris has seconded it. Everybody who is in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with your project and thank you for all your hard work. Yeah, I don't live very far from there. I understand. I understand the work that is involved. Okay, so we have no business items, but we do have a discussion item that is an executive session. So the staff is going to leave and 2 of them are going to a presentation where they're getting awards is what I understand. Oh, 3, well then.
What's what? No, nothing.
Nothing, oh, nothing, there's nothing. All right.
Eric, can you close the recording as well? So we are also ending the recording as executive section is privileged
So if
between
anybody,
the attorneys and the
if
commission.
anybody's listening,
Yes.
thank you for joining us. I don't think anybody's still there. All right.